Well, this is the Nissan Patrol Warrior TI. It's a special version of the Y62 Patrol that's produced by Nissan Australia's engineering partner Premcar, and this one's following in the wheel tracks of some other Warriors that were based on Navara Utes. There's Navara Pro 4X Warrior and the lower priced Navara SL Warrior. So this is the third one out of the shed, and it's obviously the first one based on an SUV, and it's had quite a few changes too, which we'll show you as we walk around it. You can see the front looks quite different, but what's really distinctive is this big Warrior engine bash plate underneath, which gives you an indication of some of the specialised equipment they've fitted to this vehicle to improve its off-road performance, and indeed without sacrificing any of its on-road performance. So one of the big changes here is the wider track, the track width between the wheels. That's been widened about 40 millimetres, and the suspension's also been raised, which in combination with larger tyres increases ground clearance by about 50 millimetres. So it's got a wider track, and it's sitting higher off the ground to improve its off-road performance. And there's some other changes as we walk around. I was just looking at these wheels and tyres. These are unique to the Warrior. These 18-inch alloys and these really big Yokohama Geolander all-terrain tyres. They help in raising the vehicle off the ground as well because of their thick sidewalls. So they work very well. Modified suspension, change of springs and various other things. And these nice big plastic wheel arch flares which shroud the wider track. And some very nice Warrior decals down the side as well. So it looks like a pretty quality job. Let's have a look inside. Well, given the Y62 is probably about more than a decade old now, you can probably say its instrumentation's looking a bit dated with the analog gauges and pretty small kind of touch screen for the infotainment system, and a lot of mechanical dials and buttons. I really like the fact this has got all these old mechanical types of dials and switches. It's much easier to operate when you're driving the vehicle. But you can see some changes that they've made in terms of turning it into a Warrior. There's a lot of this synthetic suede inserts on the dashboard with the little Warrior insignia here, which is really nicely done. And there's piano black inserts on the center console and down here, so you can see it's been nicely done, very high quality finish. So just a few little subtle changes to define it from the standard Y62 TI. It's based on the TI model. Have a look in the back. Now there's an enormous amount of room in this back seat. I mean, this has got as much space as one of those full-size American pickups. Because I'm 186 centimetres tall and the driver's seat is in my position, and I've still got like 20 centimetres of knee room behind there, so it's got massive space. Just have a quick look in the third row of seating. As you can see, these seats tumble forward, which gives you good access to the third row. Now, something really interesting down here is what they call the Bi-Modal Exhaust system. You see these exhaust outlets here, and it's really good because what this does, this is another Warrior feature. What it does, it gives you the best of both worlds. So if you're driving along, say, on the highway, and just with a steady amount of throttle, the exhaust just goes through to the back of the vehicle through the conventional muffler system, so it's nice and quiet. However, if you want to engage in what we always say is spirited driving, and you want to hear the full-throated roar of that V8, then the exhaust diverts. There's a valve in it. The exhaust diverts out these pipes here, and it sounds pretty good. Just have a listen. So you can see a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde character depending on how you want to drive it. It's a neat feature. And we'll come around to the tailgate here, which is mechanical, of course, no power lift. And yeah, it's a big vehicle inside. There's a heap of space. Another Warrior changes are these big recovery hooks here. It's a 3.5 ton tow bar, because this jigger will easily tow 3.5 ton, which is great. And I must say, just looking at it, even though it's more than a decade old, I must say, just with freshen ups of the front and rear fascias, the tail lights, the grille, and those sort of things, it still looks remarkably modern, remarkably fresh for a vehicle that is more than 10 years old. So Nissan, I think, we're ahead of their time with the styling of this vehicle, because to me anyway, it still looks remarkably fresh in 2024. Let's go and see what it's like to drive. Oh, don't you just love that V8 burble? Such a good sound. This is powered by one of the best V8s in the business. It's a 5.6 litre high feature V8. I mean, it's got dual overhead cams, 4 valves per cylinder, so 32 valves, and variable valve timing. And as a result, it's got a heap of performance too, which, even though it's getting on more than a decade or so since it was launched, this still packs a punch in terms of its outputs. 298 kilowatts of power and a massive 560 newton meters of torque. So it's a really torque-rich engine, and that's what makes it so effortless to drive. You're just cruising along here, sticking to the speed limit, of course. I barely got my foot resting on the accelerator. It's just got so much torque, it just burbles along, and you've hardly got to lean into it, which is a good thing to have, because it certainly likes a drink, like big V8s. Probably consumption in the mid-teens in terms of litres per 100k. But you can drive it fairly economical when you want to, which is good. And so that superb V8 is hooked up to an equally refined 7-speed torque converter automatic, and that's connected to a full-time 4-wheel drive system. And that gives you the choice of full auto, which is just for everyday driving, and then you've got a choice of high or low ratios when you want to go off-road. Plus there's several drive modes to suit different terrain like snow, mud, rocks and things. And you can also engage a locking rear differential, and that can all be done by a single dial on the console, which is really convenient. Determining what changes Premcar have made in terms of turning this standard TI into a Warrior, it's just got that special vehicle feel. The basic car rides so well on this quite brilliant hydraulically controlled active suspension. But what Premcar have done is just basically refine that product to make the drive, you know, more engaging, more responsive. It's just a little bit more disciplined, a little bit sharper in its response to driver input, without sacrificing the Patrol's legendary ride quality. So it's a really, really well designed package. It's not radically different to the standard machine, but the differences are enough to change the driving experience. It's a really, really enjoyable thing to drive. And with this amount of power and the taut nature of this handling, it really belies the fact this weighs more than 2.8 tons. I mean, it's a real heavyweight, but you just wouldn't know it driving it because the suspension response is so good and the amount of power delivery is so high that it just feels far more agile than it really has a right to feel. So they've done a terrific job turning this into a Warrior. And just on that V8, I mean, it sounds fantastic. I'll just do a bit of a launch here up to 60 kilometers an hour just to give you an idea of how it sounds. I mean, it really does tap into your inner muscle car fan, this. I mean, it's very clever with that Bi-Modal exhaust system because, like I say, you can burble around town with it very quietly, and then when you want to hear that full V8 roar, the other pipes open up. Try again. Yeah, doesn't it sound great? Fantastic. So the verdict, well, if you consider that the Warrior changes are worth about $16,000 on top of a standard TI, so that pushes the retail price just over $100,000, which may seem like a lot of money, but when you compare it to, say, a top shelf Land Cruiser 300 series like a Sahara, which these days is knocking on about $150,000, you know, if you're prepared to live with the V8's thirst and you don't mind the slightly outdated tech here and there, you'd have to look at the Nissan Patrol Warrior as, gee, something of a bargain. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, please subscribe, and always leave a comment. We welcome your comments. All of that helps us grow the channel, and we'll look forward to catching up with you next time. See you guys.